Coming up next on Global Perspectives, I'll be talking with Laura Gutierrez from Argentina. Please stay tuned. Welcome to Global Perspectives, conversations about culture and education. I am Gaston Gomez, and today I'll be talking with my guest, Laura Gutierrez from Argentina. Laura, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
No, I'm excited to have you. I have never had a guest and a friend from Argentina in our show, so I'm excited, and I look forward to getting to know you a little bit more, and for our viewers to also learn about your background, education, and your perspective growing up in Argentina, but also now living here in Anne Arundel County. So as a resident of Anne Arundel County and working for the city of Annapolis, I am so excited for you to share with everybody more about you. So, but first question is, tell us where you are from and how many languages do you speak?
Okay, so I'm from Quilmes, Argentina. It's a city right outside of Buenos Aires. It's the capital of Argentina, and I'm not sure if everybody knows where Argentina is, but it's in South America, right next to Chile, underneath Brazil and Uruguay. It's sort of, if you think of South America, sort of a lopsided ice cream cone. I'm on that cone to the right side. Right in the middle is Buenos Aires, and Quilmes is right to the east of that. So that's where I'm from. I speak Spanish. That's what we speak there. English, since my mom is from here, from the U.S., and so I also speak English since was very little, and Portuguese, which is what I studied in college.
So you speak 3 languages?
3 languages. At one point, I also spoke French, but unfortunately, it didn't stick.
I'm sure it's still there somewhere. Thank you. Growing up, do you go to public schools or private schools?
I went to private schools. I went to school that was bilingual, so we learned English and Spanish throughout the school, and right in the northern side of Buenos Aires, called Lincoln. And then when I moved to the U.S., I went to a private school in the U.S., Potomac School, and then private college as well.
So if you think back when you were in Argentina, for your friends or family members who went to public schools, was there attendance mandatory? Because I know in private schools it is mandatory because they want you to be there every day, but when it comes to public education, is expected for the student to be there? Is it part of the law?
Mm-hmm. So I'm not exactly sure if it's part of the law. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of incentives to get kids to school, like the Asignación Universal por Hijo, which is a monetary economic incentive, and there's the school supplies that are provided and based all on incentives of whether your child is getting their vaccinations and if they're actually going to school. So I'm pretty sure it's required. It's just a lot of people don't actually fulfill that. And it's one of those things that we continue to fight worldwide, right, for all of our kids to get education.
And how early does education start in Argentina?
So there's daycares, just like there are here, since you
public.
can send kids. Yeah, you can send kids to there's daycares that are public, and so you can send your kids to the daycare already from very, very young ages, and then at 4 or 5, they start pre-K.
Okay, good. And so this pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school, for the most part, is public. It's offered by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now, growing up, like as you said, you were part of the private education, but I am sure your parents were very involved in your education growing up. How did they feel that?
So my mom was very involved, and full credit to her. She was really pushing for our education. A lot of times, even when we had moved back to the States, when I was in high school, I went back to Argentina. I wanted to go back to high school there, and she said, no, I want you to get this education here at this place. She was very adamant about our education being the very best that she could find for us and that she could provide for us. So, and my dad, he also really values education, but he also values life experiences. So So he was more about pushing us to be more engaged. Every time I would visit him, we would go to different soup kitchens and provide support, or go to factories and organize events for the kids and the families that were from the factory. So it was sort of a holistic experience with education, in terms of it's not just within an institution, it's also about what you're doing and how you're servicing your community.
Interesting. And so do you feel that it had a positive impact in your personal life when it came to having that support from mom and dad? Different perspectives, right? But
oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have gotten through everything without my parents, and they definitely pushed me to be the person I am today.
Good. So as everybody agree that parent involvement in our schools is very important, in spite of where you grew up. Where you grew up, right? If it's in Central America, South America, in Europe, Asia, South Asia, it's important for the parent to be involved.
Yeah, and family in general, right? It's sometimes we don't have parents. I have 3 cousins who their mom and dad died, so my dad adopted them, and so he was the parent figure for them, and he took them in and supported them and helped them go to school and got them through different systems, and they went to public school. Then they went to private schools, and they went back to public school, and he really worked with them and with tutors to make sure that they were able to stabilize their studies, since they had a whole lot of trauma also involved in their life when they lost their parents at a young age. But I'd say family in general is crucial for us getting through, and just general support systems, having friends, family, caregivers that can help us and push us and motivate us to continue, especially when things get hard in school, is really important.
Thank you for sharing. You mentioned earlier that you were here for high school, and then you went back. So when did you move to the United States? When did you decide to move here permanently to the United States? And what year, around what year did you arrive?
So it's a complicated question, believe it or not. So I officially moved back 2 years ago. But when I was about 8 or 9, we moved back to the States, and then I went to school until high school. Then I did a couple of months of school in Argentina until my mom said, no, come back. And then in college, again, I did a year in Argentina and 3 years in the U.S. And I did a semester abroad in Brazil as well. So I've been sort of going back and forth my whole life, and I've a little bit done that with the education system as well.
So mom and dad are still in Argentina?
Dad is still in Argentina. My mom is here.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So why did you choose Anne Arundel County?
So, like I just said, my mom is here, and my family, my mom's side is from here, from Anne Arundel County. So it was when we decided to come back to the U.S., which was basically because there was a lot of inflation going on in Argentina, and it was getting a lot harder to be able to sustain our family there. And my mom said, why don't you guys try coming here, and you guys can live with me, and so until you guys can get on your own 2 feet. So my husband, my daughter, and I came to sort of coming for the American dream, right? Trying to find better opportunities for ourselves, for our child, and make sure that we can really give her the best of life.
So what was your first initial reaction when you, even though you were here before as a child and you went back and forth, but what was your first initial reaction when you permanently moved here a few years ago? Any cultural shock or experiences that you went through that I would like for you to share.
So I'll share now, but I'll share a little bit about when I was younger too.
Yes,
so
please.
When we moved here, I think I was 9, and so I was joining the 3rd grade, and my mom says, I can't really remember this, my mom says I didn't speak at all for 3 months, that I just stopped speaking to anybody, because I didn't know how to speak English perfectly, and I was really nervous about it, and so I didn't want to speak to anybody, so I just was silently working my way through. I remember one of my first memories of school here, I at a new school. They had these trains in the outside in the playground, and so I sat in one of the little train spaces, and this girl Ariel Brown came up to me, and she started, wanting to be my friend and talking to me in English, and I couldn't reply to her, so I started speaking in Spanish, and and so it was just sort of my natural response was in Spanish, and she didn't understand what I was saying, and then I was like, oh, I'm just joking, I'm just trying to see if you guys know what I'm saying. And so that happened to me a lot, that I'd always feel really embarrassed that I couldn't, or that I naturally would start speaking Spanish, and I wouldn't be able to quite communicate the way I was hoping to, but that I was lucky in that I had really great friends that also were really excited and interested in my life, and the fact that I was from Argentina was something that was interesting to them. So they were curious about it and would ask me questions, and if I spoke Spanish, they would actually ask me what I was saying and want to try to learn it. So that was one of my first things that I remember, is the fact the language was really hard. It was really hard to sort of navigate having to basically speak a whole new set of, whole new language, and with a whole new set of different people who didn't really quite understand me. And now coming back, I think it's been a lot easier. I feel like I do come back. I was coming back every couple of years, every 3 years or so to the area. But moving here has been an experience. I'd say it was not as easy as we thought it was going to be, for sure. But also, it's just, this county has a lot to offer, and I didn't even know we had a beach here in the county that we could go to. I just, parts of this area that I hadn't explored, and now I'm really getting to explore the area, and it's really beautiful, and I can enjoy it in a different way, right?
Honestly, I forgot about the beach in the county that we have here, in a beautiful park that is also by the Chesapeake Bay area. Great. So that was interesting to hear your perspective, and also your cultural shock when you were a child, and the language barrier that you experienced, and also as an adult, what you have experienced as well. Very interesting. And I really enjoy hearing that from different people, or different guests that we have had in the show, that they share different perspectives, and also different cultural shocks that they live through their lives in the United States, moving to the United States. So overall, what do you think are some of the biggest cultural differences between your country, Argentina, and the United States?
What a question. I don't want to say anything too sticky here. So I'd say in Argentina, people really live day to day in a way that doesn't happen here. I think people here have a lot more planning and structure, and career building even. In Argentina, it's very different. It's very horizontal. It's about building together, and it's about sort of making sure we make it through day to day. And I feel like that's sort of the lifestyle that I see in my dad, and the way that he's raised us, and then in what I see in my American side is that it's a lot more career driven. It's a lot more planning and getting organized for a whole life, and preparing and making objectives and goals and things like that. Whereas you can't really balance that life out that way in Argentina. There's a lot of sort of disruptions that are from from much higher than at the local level, right? So it just it can disrupt one day to the next. You might not be able to go to the bank and get your savings out, or something like that. So the planning in the way that and the relying on government structures, the way that you can do that here is not something that is as stable in Argentina.
All right. So very interesting. Also, I would like for you to tell us that you grew up in Argentina, you were educated in Argentina for the most part, but now you have a child who is in daycare, for what you shared earlier. But what is your what is your perspective or and expectation of the daycare provider, and also eventually your child will join our schools, a pre-K and a wonderful pre-K and a kindergarten. So based on what you lived through, what is it that has given you the tools as a multilingual person, but also as a person who is driven, coming from a very relaxed country, where, like you said, is day to day living, and now you're here and you goal driven and everything is scheduled and structured. What is your expectation as a parent of a child who's going to be a student in Anne Arundel County?
Well, I mean, 99% of the reason we moved here was for our daughter to have great education and better opportunities. And I think even at her daycare, I see how they're learning the seasons and the days and counting numbers. And Juana comes back, she can count to 20 and she's only 3. And so already I see how much she's advancing here, and how there's so much that any system of education can really provide for her. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with her as she gets older and what she decides to do with her life. But I think I fully expect our school system to be able to guide her in that direction and to really help her find her passions and be the best version of herself that she can be. And yeah, I'm excited to get to that point in her life. We haven't quite gotten to our public school system, but I do know that it's we have a great school nearby our house, and her cousins went there, and my cousins went there, and so I know that it's a great school, and she'll have a place where she can really grow and yeah.
Are you teaching her Spanish as well? Is she bilingual or trilingual as you?
So that's a question. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of parents that are Latino here have a hard time around. She understands everything in Spanish. She just will not speak it, is where we're at right now. She used to speak only Spanish, and then she did this switch when she started daycare, where she now speaks English and no Spanish. So it actually reminds me of when I was little, that I would only speak English or only speak Spanish, but I really didn't like mixing it. It just really confused me. And she's definitely, she has a couple of words that she'll bring in that are in Spanish. She's not fully bilingual, I would say. She still has to learn how to speak it and be more comfortable speaking it, even though she does know, she can understand everything.
Very interesting that you see your daughter a reflection of you when you were younger.
Yeah.
Exactly, but in a different scenario. Now we're talking about she is here, and her playmates at the daycare are, I'm sure, mostly American, or not bilingual like your daughter. I'm sure your daughter. I mean, your daughter is bilingual because she's understanding Spanish.
Yeah.
She's not able to express it, but in her brain is bilingual. Is developing into a bilingual.
Yeah, and it's funny how it
brain.
switched. Just like
Isn't it beautiful that you
at
can
around
go back and
2
forth?
years, she just went straight to speaking everything in English. In a way, it was amazing that she just it really was like 1 month to the next, and it was a switch from Spanish to English, and that's where we're at now.
Yeah, brain is powerful, that's for sure. Are you reading to her? Do you read to her in English
Yes.
and Spanish, or
Yes.
with just one language at home? Do you speak to her in only one language at home?
We speak to her in English and Spanish. Yeah.
Both, okay.
So her dad doesn't speak English, so we only speak Spanish to each other. But then he tries to, he practices English with her, and so a lot of our conversation is in English, but we definitely also speak to her in Spanish and make sure that she knows and understands. And we have expectations of going back to Argentina and visiting, and if she doesn't speak Spanish, she won't be able to speak to her grandparents, right? Or her uncles. So we need to make sure that she definitely maintains and keeps up her Spanish language.
Her heritage.
Yep.
Good, good. So, so you and I have worked closely together for the past couple of years, and I know about you, but I would like for our audience to know about you, your role for the city of Annapolis and beyond the city of Annapolis, because there's so much that you do in your role supporting our Hispanic community and beyond. I think you do more than the Hispanic community. So yeah, please tell us, how do you get started for the city of Annapolis? What is it that you do for the city of Annapolis? The things that you do for the city of Annapolis, and all the extra activities that you have been able to bring into life in collaboration with the Anne Arundel County office as well.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, in Argentina, I was working for the Ministry of Social Development. So, and I was working in workforce development, working with co-ops, creating different training programs, and a lot of my work was organizing, and I loved that, and I really got to travel the country in Argentina with that work. You know, I would go 3 days to the northern part, then I'd go to the southern, then I'd go to east, you know, so I got to really get to know my country, and also really develop a passion for organizing and working with low-income families, and especially women. So 75% of the women, of the people who were in the programs that I worked in with, were women only, and women with really difficult backgrounds and situations of domestic violence were the majority of our cases. So when I came back to the States, that's something I really feel like that's where my passions lie. That's where I want my career to go. I love organizing. I love working with people, especially with families. And so I started at Centro de los Derechos del Migrante, the Center for Migrant Rights in Baltimore, with Rachel Micah Jones, who gave me an opportunity there to get started again in the U.S. And I started going to events that were in the county, and I went to a fundraiser that was for Centro de Ayuda, Center of Help, that was local, and I was looking to get more involved and looking to support and help out in the community. And at that fundraiser, I actually met Adriana Lee, who was the current Hispanic Community Services Specialist for the city of Annapolis. And she mentioned that she was leaving her job, or that she had just left her job, and you know that the city was going to be looking for somebody to hire to be the Hispanic Community Services Specialist. And I said, wow, that's just like a total dream job, because that gets to pull in organizing, working with community, and not only that, but it pulls in my roots. It pulls in, you know, the fact that I am also Latina, and I get to speak Spanish and work with other families that sort of have similar histories and stories that are close to my families, right? So I, you know, luckily got that job, and I've been here ever since. That was, you know, not too long ago, though. 2 years ago, I guess now. No, not even 2 years ago. Sorry, it was like a year and a couple months, a year and a half maybe max. And I basically organize events. So we just did the Dia de los Muertos festival at Maryland Hall. I organize meetings with community members, listening sessions. It depends, you know, I also arrived as the pandemic was in its peak. So it was right when we had all of these cases majority of the cases were Hispanic in Annapolis. So there was a lot of work to be done around organizing around COVID. So we created a program called Take Care Annapolis, Cuídate Annapolis, where we basically went into our communities. We did needs assessments and developed programs based on those needs. We spoke to our neighbors. We listened, essentially, in a moment where there was a lot of people who were withdrawing, and businesses that were closing, and organizations that were moving to a virtual world. We were making sure that we were in neighborhoods, talking to our neighbors, and making sure that whatever they needed, we could provide. You know, you remember probably at the very beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't even get toilet paper, face masks, let alone sanitizers, Clorox, and things like that. So we actually started taking those to neighborhoods and to houses and to our Latino neighbors, and making sure that they had all of those PPE, all the essential materials to make sure that they were staying, protecting themselves from COVID, since we knew that the highest rate of contagion was in the Latino community. And from the work we were doing there, we were able to create data in a space where we really didn't have data about the Hispanic community of Annapolis. We now have a big database. We also asked, how do we get information to you guys? Because one of the things we didn't know was how to create a good communications channel so that we were able to continue to share information, share resources. So we created a texting base for that, which was, overwhelmingly what everybody was interested in getting, a texting base. So we now can share any events and resources.
Laura, you mentioned data. Can you give us an estimate of, based on this last census, how many Hispanic residents are in Anne Arundel County?
In Anne Arundel County?
No, I mean city. City of Annapolis.
So Anne Arundel County had around 6% of its population was Hispanic in the last census, and now it's grown to 10%. I can't remember the exact number, but in the city we have 22.8% of the population is Hispanic, so almost a quarter, 1 in 4.
It's growing. It's
growing, and it's really interesting to see the actual data, on a map, on the Annapolis map. So when you look at it, a lot of sort of the southern area of Annapolis has really grown in its Latino community. And we see also with the amount of businesses, Hispanic businesses, restaurants that are growing and springing up now, right?
Well, thank you. I mean, I would love to see you again and have you back and continue to talk about data and specific supports that we are providing in the city, but also in the county for our Hispanic community. So it really it's been an honor having you joining us, and it's really an honor to work with you, supporting our community, our wonderful community. So thank you for being with us. And before you go, I would love to share the next quote from Ella Fitzgerald. Just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong. Again, by Ella Fitzgerald. Thank you for watching.